Good morning, my fellow Go Horror besties. Today we're going to be doing about just a brief story on the soap killer. I'm going to play a short video in just a moment, but I want to give my normal speech here. Viewer discretion is advised, and to please do your own research. Just because I found something doesn't mean that it could be necessarily completely accurate. You know how the internet is. So I'm gonna get started by just playing this quick brief video, and then we'll jump right into discussing everything.
Three of my friends, whom I turned into biscuits and soap that I gave to those around me. I am Leonardo Cianciulli, born on November 14th, 1893, in Montella, Italy, and I am nicknamed the Soap Maker of Correggio. My eldest son, Giuseppe, was called for military service during World War II, and I was extremely afraid for his safety. In order to protect my son, I performed rituals and sacrifices, believing that it could safeguard him and prevent him from being killed. To attract my victims, I invited them for tea. That's how I killed my first victim, Faustina Setti. I poisoned a glass of wine that I gave her, then used a hatchet to cut her body into several pieces, which I used to make soap sold in my shop. For the other two victims, I brought them to my home, making them believe I was going to find them a husband, and then simply poisoned their tea. I then used the blood of my victims to make delicious biscuits that I gave to my neighbors and friends. The sister of my last victim began to worry about her disappearance, and the police then knocked on my door to question me. At that time, I was wearing the ring of the last victim, and that's how my sinister secret was discovered. I was then sentenced to 30 years in prison and 3 years in a psychiatric institution. I served only 24 years before succumbing to a stroke in 1970. Killed 3 of my friends.
And that is just a brief moment of what we're gonna start going into. So as you heard on that video, Leonardo, who was born on April 14th, 1989 and passed away on October 15th, 1970. She was an Italian serial killer who was better known as the soap maker of Correggio. She murdered 3 women and turned their bodies into soap and tea cakes. And as you heard, she fed those tea cakes to her neighbors, friends, family, that kind of thing. So in 1970, she married a registry office clerk named Raphael Pansardi, and her mother did not approve of this marriage, and she just planned to marry another man. Leonardo later claimed that on this occasion, her mother had cursed them. After their home was destroyed in 1930 due to an earthquake, they moved once more to Correggio, where Leonardo opened up a small shop, and she was very popular, very well respected within her neighborhood. Everybody knew her, they would buy her soaps and that kind of thing. She had 17 pregnancies during her marriage, and 3 of the children were lost due to miscarriage, and 10 of her children died in their youth. I couldn't find anything on how these children died, but she became heavily protective of her 4 surviving children. Her fears were fueled by a warning she had received sometime earlier from a fortune teller, and they said that she would marry and have children, but all of those children would die. She also visited a Romani who practiced palm reading and told her, "In your right hand, I see prison. In your left, I see a criminal asylum." And that was in 1939. She then learned that her oldest son and favorite child was going to join the Royal Italian Army in preparation for the Second World War. But she was determined to protect him at all costs and came to the conclusion that his safety required human sacrifices. She found her victims in 3 middle-aged women in all different types of neighborhoods. So as you heard, Setti was a lifelong spinster who had come for help in finding a husband. She just truly felt that Leonardo would be able to find her a suitable partner and asked her to tell no one of the news. She just wanted it a secret between the 2 of them. Then it became that she was persuaded to write letters and postcards to relatives and friends, and they were to be mailed to those people, preparing for her departure. Seti went to visit Leonardo one last time, and that's when she was killed with an axe and dragged into a closet where her body was placed. She cut her up into 9 parts, gathering the blood in a basin, and described what happened next in an official statement that she gave. She said, and I quote, "I threw those pieces into a pot and I added 7 kilos of caustic soda, which I had bought to make soap. I stirred the mixture until the pieces dissolved into a thick, dark mush that I poured into several buckets and emptied in a nearby septic tank. As for the blood in the basin, I waited until it was coagulated and dried it in the oven, ground it and mixed it with flour, sugar, chocolate, milk, and eggs, as well as a bit of margarine, kneading all of the ingredients together. I made lots of crunchy tea cakes and served them to the ladies who came to visit, though my son and I also ate them. Some sources also recorded that she received Seti's life savings, which was $30,000 as payment for her services. Her next victim was Soavi, and she claimed to have found her at a job at a school for girls. Like the victim with Seti, she was persuaded to write postcards to be sent to friends, detailing her plans on her departure. She also went to visit Leonardo before her departure, where she was drugged with wine and killed again with an axe. This murder occurred on September 5th, 1940, and she disposed of the body in the exact same way that she disposed of Seti's body, and was stated to obtain $3,000 from her second victim. Her third and final victim was by the name of Ascio, and she was a former soprano who was said to have sang at La Scala. As with the other 2 women, she instructed her again to not tell a single person and write postcards and letters to her family stating that she was departing. It was kind of just a trend that she had. She did the exact same thing with all 3 women. And on September 30th, 1940, she came for her last visit with Leonardo. But unlike the first 2 victims, the pattern of the murder was the same. Unlike the first 2 victims, she melted the body to make soap. According to Leonardo's statement, she ended up in the pot like the other 2, but her flesh was fat and white. When it had melted, I added a bit of cologne, and after a long time on the boil, I was able to make some most acceptable creamy soap. I gave the bars to neighbors and acquaintances. The cakes, too, were better. That woman was really sweet. Leonardo reportedly received $50,000 in assorted jewels and public bonds. She even sold all of the victims' clothing and shoes. Leonardo was captured and tried for the murders in 1946, but she remained unrepentant and going as far to correct the official account on stand. She remained unrepentant and going as far as to correct the official account while on the stand. She was said to have gripped the witness stand rail with oddly delicate hands and calmly set the prosecutors right on certain details. She said with deep set dark eyes that gleamed with an inner pride as she concluded, "I gave the copper ladle which I used to skim the fat off for the kettles to my country, which was so badly in need of metal during the last days of the war." She was found guilty and sentenced to 30 years in prison and 3 years in a criminal asylum. Just as that palm reader had said, she would end up in prison and in a criminal asylum. But as that video said, she only served 24 years. She ended up dying in the criminal asylum on October 15th, 1970 of a stroke. A number of artifacts from the case, including the pot that the victims were boiled in, are on display at a criminologic museum in Rome. They just put this stuff on display like these people weren't brutally murdered. There was also a darkly comic play called Love and Magic in Mama's Kitchen, which was first produced by a Lena Wertmuller at a festival in 1979, and the play began a run on Broadway in 1983. So there was just a lot of things towards the end where she got all of her artifacts in a museum, she got a play, and things like that. And I just feel like we need to remember that all of the victims are the ones that matter. They're the ones that need a memory kept on them. They're the ones that are the most important part of all of this, not Leonarda. But we know how it can get out there when it comes to serial killers. And that is the story, the wild, wild story of Leonarda. And she was a very interesting person who was a cannibal, and she just fed all of these disgusting things to different people because bodies and body parts and things like that are not meant to be consumed, and that's just disgusting and wild, in my opinion. I appreciate you for taking the time to listen to today's episode. I look forward to getting more out there on a consistent basis. Again, if there's anything that you would like me to report on, I would absolutely love to do that as well. And I will see you guys all soon for the next one. Thank you so much.